What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here with the official Madden 21 next gen versus current gen comparison. So of course, first we've got to talk about the graphics. Always a big talking point when you jump to a new console. You can see the current gen image on the left, the next gen on the right. I'll say not as big of a jump as we've normally seen with past console generation changes. You're going to notice better lighting, of course, one of the biggest things they've talked about with next gen consoles. You see a little bit more muscle definition and things like that. Skin tones are more accurate. The colors on the field and the stadium more accurate. Now, with the rain here on Christian McCaffrey, this is where you kind of see the bigger difference with the rain on the helmets and in the jerseys now. The jerseys get a little bit dirtier and things like that, but nothing too crazy. It's mostly, for me, what I've been able to tell, lighting and rain is where you see the biggest graphical jump because they've added a little bit more there. You can see it really good here on the image of Deion Jones. You could see, just judging by the black helmet, you just see the rain soaked into the helmet and into the jerseys a lot more. You can see that the jerseys look a lot more wet, and you can see the lighting on his number a little bit better as well. Now here we're going to look at a 360 shot of Michael Thomas. This is of course on current gen, as you can see in the bottom left hand corner, and when we jump to next gen, you'll notice some slight differences. Again, nothing crazy, but you'll notice the skin tone's more accurate, the field colors are a little bit more accurate, the muscle definition is a little bit better, and the jersey textures and wrinkles are a little bit better. So we're going to show a side by side in a second, but you see here jumping to next gen, you can tell skin tone is better. There's a little bit more muscle definition. That is something they talked about that they did. They added a little bit more with the body types. Nothing crazy, but definitely a little bit more definition in different types of body types to make it, I guess, so players stand out a little bit more and look more like themselves. You can see here side by side, mainly the biggest differences you're going to see, like I said already, skin tone, the muscle definition, and the jerseys, of course, a little bit more wrinkled, a little bit more realistic. It doesn't look as like stuck or painted on the body, I guess you could say. Now let's talk about the game intros. Now this was an area that they were really talking about when they were talking about next level presentation, game intros, sidelines, and things like that. The presentation kind of going up a notch. Now this is the current gen intro, the one we've seen all year. This is new to Madden 21, where they redid the intros, where they're like these really cinematic kind of deals. Not something I'm really a huge fan of, but when you go over to the next gen, as we're about to switch over, there's really not much of a difference. I think there might be a couple little new scenes in there, and they show more fire when you run out of the tunnel, but when they were talking about the intros being so much better, or, you know, more lifelike, or, you know, maybe larger than life even, I'm not really seeing that with next gen. It really feels like I'm watching the same thing over and over. Like I said, there might be a little more fire, couple scenes there, but nothing crazy. Now, one of the most notable changes you will see is the Playcall Screen, which I think is a good upgrade, but it does take some time to get used to. So here's the current gen Playcall Screen on the right hand side of the screen, kind of the one we've been, you know, accustomed to for some years now, where you can go up and down by formation, concept, play type, personnel, recent plays, and things like that. Now in a second here, as we jump over to the next gen, you can see it's now at the bottom of the screen. You've got your coach suggestions, you hit your bumper, you go over to player. You can now call plays based on player. So if we select Michael Thomas, it'll pull up all the plays where Michael Thomas is the primary receiver. You go over, now you have formation, you have concept, you have play type, all the same things you had, but it's a little bit more streamlined. You've got personnel, and then they got a new thing that's called favorites. You can see we have some favorites in there already, and then we have recent plays. So if you want to favorite a play, you just want to double tap the icon of the play. So curl flats, if we want to add that, we will double tap Y. You see the heart pop up in the right hand corner, and then if we go to our favorites, it's now in there, and then we can carry it out on the field. So this is one of the better changes, while very small. Being able to save your favorite plays, I think, is definitely a good addition to the game. The new play call menu, definitely a bit of a facelift. So now let's talk about the sidelines, an area that's needed a big facelift in Madden for a while. So you can see here on current gen, not real players, not real body types, no equipment on players, no last names on the jerseys. They're just very, very random, generic, weird looking players. The sidelines look awful. Now, as we switch over to next gen, there's a few things I want you to notice. So right here, these are real players. That's really Demario Davis, Marcus Williams, Marshawn Lattimore. They have their equipment on, their real face scans. That's their real rendered player models there on the sideline, and those guys look fantastic. But as we pan around, I want you to notice some things. Now, look at Thomas Morstead, Will Lutz, Gardner Johnson. Those are not real players. They have generic faces, no equipment. You could see Cam Jordan, that's really Cameron Jordan, his real player model. That's really Malcolm Jenkins right there, but right beside him, Latavius Murray, that's not Latavius Murray, that's not his face, he has no equipment on. However, when you look at the backs, they do all have their name. You see Murray's name is there, even though that's not his real player model. That's really Cameron Jordan, you can tell because he has an equipment, he looks real. You can see Gardner Johnson and Will Lutz, they all have their names, but they do not have their actual faces. So while some of the sideline is real players, some of them still aren't truly real players. Now let's take a look at how the sidelines come to life, or that's at least what they said. So we're going to throw a pass here. You can see a lot of the same animations in the game, and we go out of bounds. Now you do see they make an effort to move out of the way, something EA said they would do, but this is far from lifelike. Yes, they're a little bit more alive than current gen. That's not saying much. They do make an effort to move out of the way a little bit, but they're still very basic on the sidelines. Here is another good example. We've got Chubb going out here. You can see some players move. Now the one interesting thing here is you'll see with Minkah Fitzpatrick running out of bounds, a player does try to help, stop him and hold him up, which is something that is actually new to Madden. So they are a little bit more alive, but nothing crazy. You can see here's a shot at what's going on the sideline. You've got a guy on the bike, you've got some people on the bench, you've got some people watching the game, you've got some people kind of stretching or tying their shoe. You can see there's some players huddled up talking. So while the sidelines are a little bit more alive, it's nothing, again, too crazy. You can see we got a Saints player walking here. We've got most players watching the game, hands on their pads or their helmets. You can see, again, we got a guy on the bike in the back. We got a guy that looks like he's tying his shoe. Got a guy kneeling, right? So it's a little bit more alive, but I want you to watch this. Now, this is like a big 70-yard touchdown here. This is next gen, and you look at the Saints sideline, you wouldn't even know anything's happening. They're not really moving. They're not really excited about the play, and this is something we have seen done well on older games like All-Pro Football 2K8, and here's the Packers sideline. During that same big play, they're not really getting too involved. So, yes, the sidelines are better, but they're far from alive. And here's another shot at the sideline. This is current gen, looking at the photographers and the audio people. These guys have really not been updated or upgraded in a while. Their player models are still very kind of low res. Here's next gen, a very, very slight change. Mostly it looks like they kind of just changed what they're wearing. They look a slight bit better, but again, nothing too crazy. And they did add a security guard by the wall of fans in the end zone, so that is another new touch as well. Now, speaking of that, let's get into the crowds. So the crowds are another area that they said was going to be upgraded. They're going to be more lifelike. Now, one of these additions is that when you score, you can now celebrate with the crowd, which is definitely nice. It looks great. You can see Emmanuel Sanders jumping up here. They're patting him. He's going crazy. It's kind of Lambeau Leap style, right? It looks really great. It's fun. The crowd looks a little bit more alive. Now, the thing with this, though, is from what I can tell, this is the only crowd celebration in the game. So it doesn't matter what team you're using. It doesn't matter what stadium you're in. Pretty much every crowd celebration, as you're going to see, is pretty much just the Lambeau Leap over and over and over. So while it does look good, and while it's fun, and while it's nice to be in the game, it is the only crowd celebration, at least as of right now, which means no matter how great it looks or how much fun it is, it's going to get old very quickly, because if it's the only one you can do, it's just too repetitive. You're going to get tired of it. So the crowd as a whole didn't really get much of a facelift. If you look at the crowd in game, they're still very much the same. However, they did add some nice crowd cutscenes, which I do like. I think this is a nice touch. It does cut to the crowd sometimes after big plays, where you can see them reacting, cheering. Sometimes they're a little bit mad. So the crowds did get a bit of a facelift, but again, nothing too major to write home about. Next, we have the Next Gen Stats Replays, which is one of the bigger additions for Next Gen Madden. So after big plays or sometimes just picking up a first down, you're going to trigger these Next Gen Stats Replays. So after the play, you'll see in the bottom right hand corner, it'll flash Next Gen Stats, and then shortly after, it's going to throw you into this cinematic replay, which I'm not the biggest fan of the cinematic style replay. I feel like it kind of breaks the immersion of the game. It doesn't look like a real NFL replay. However, that's how they did it, and then you're going to see certain next gen stats pop up. Like here for Drew Brees, you see his time to throw, which is a very common one that you will see when playing the game. And then after Alvin Kamara gets tackled here, you're going to see some stuff pop up for him, like his ball carrier speed, although I don't know how he got up to 20 miles an hour in that little short span right there. It seems like that one's kind of random and doesn't really factor in how fast they're truly going. It's just kind of there for show, in my opinion. You'll see here with Emmanuel Sanders after the big play. He's going to break a tackle, the other guy's going to miss him. It's going to show his ball carrier speed, and then it's also going to show his yards after the catch as he runs for a touchdown. So it is a nice new touch for next gen Madden. Now let's talk about the weather. Another thing that EA was really hyping up going into next gen, saying how much more realistic it was going to look. Here you see a shot of a rain game on current gen, and then we're going to quickly switch over to next gen. You can see again, color-wise, things look better, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the weather. It does look a little bit heavier on the rain, nothing crazy. And of course, you can see the player jerseys look more wet. That's kind of the biggest difference. Now, here as we go to current gen again, you can see we're at the end zone wall. Nothing looks wet on the ground. It doesn't even look like it's raining on the ground. But when you go to next gen, you will see there are puddles now that build up around the stadium. Although to me, they don't quite look like puddles. They really just look like wet spots on the field, if I'm being honest. Here again, current gen, panning down the sideline, you see nothing looks wet at all. When you do go to next gen again, at least the ground does look somewhat wet now. You can see what appears to be puddles. Now we go to the snow, which was another big area. So here you got an overhead view of snow on current gen. As we jump over to next gen, I'm going to say I don't really see too much of a difference here. Obviously, the color and the lighting looks different, but in terms of just the snow itself, doesn't really look too much different. It looks like the same snow we've come used to. And then we're going to pan around. You can see even on current gen, there were some snow piles here, which is something they said, you know, the snow would build up on the sidelines. But as I go to next gen, this doesn't really look too much different to me either. It looks pretty much like the same thing. I mean, the snow looks a little whiter, but it doesn't really look any different. Now let's talk about the player movement, which is definitely the biggest change of next gen, without a doubt. The gameplay feels completely different because of the player movement. So I want you to watch current gen here. Look how quickly I can just swerve around with Eckler and just change direction at top speed. We're going to show it on next gen, and then we're going to show it side by side. So it's definitely a lot slower of a game, but you can see there's more momentum here. There's more foot planning. I can't just change direction and swerve around at top speed and not actually like decelerate or plant my foot. Watch it side by side, and you'll see just how much quicker on the left he's going to get to the end zone because he never really loses top speed, whereas on the right you can see there's a lot more momentum, acceleration, and things like that to factor in, and the gameplay definitely is a lot more slowed down. You feel the difference with a guy like a Tyreek Hill that has that top end speed and acceleration. He actually feels truly more dangerous than he has before because it does factor those things in now. Now, is the player movement perfect? Is it still not very weird at times? No, I won't say that, but it definitely is a step in the right direction of being more realistic, more momentum, weight based. You have a lot more foot planning. Here's just a side-by-side running of current gen and next gen. Then I want to show you this right here. So you can see on current gen, you can see the strides and stuff like that. But one of the few differences I did notice as we go to next gen is that you could see that Austin Eckler kind of keeps his head more on a swivel. He's looking around as he runs, kind of trying to be aware of anything that could be around him. On the current gen, he doesn't do that. Now let's talk about the route running. This is another big thing that plays into the player movement, and they use next gen stats to chart these wide receivers' routes in real life so that they can run those exact routes in the game. So notice how Keenan Allen ran the little S post there on current gen. Now watch on next gen, he doesn't even really fully run the post. He kind of just more so drifts and rounds his route out. Now against an open field like this or against a zone defense, that's how he would run it in real life. Watch here on current gen, you see it's more robotic. The change of direction and the cuts are a little bit more robotic. They don't really run routes like that in real life all the time, unless it's like a man-to-man. If you see a man-to-man defense, you're going to see them make harder cuts. But if the field is open like this or it's a zone, they're going to kind of drift and run their routes more rounded like their next-gen route tree charts them in real life, because it's going to get them into those open areas a lot quicker. Look how much quicker Keenan Allen gets down the field on this route on next-gen because he's rounding that route out and he's not making that robotic hard cut following the line. Here's another area where you'll see it really good when we do the close-ups. You can see the current gen corner route, right? Now watch on next gen how he's going to round this out more, much like he would do it in real life. This also helps with him really getting into the break quicker, which is an area that Madden has struggled in. See how robotic the change of direction is there? Now watch when we go to next gen how he rounds it out. This is going to help him get to the open spot, get to his area on the field where you want to hit him much quicker. It's going to allow the defenders not as easy of a chance to catch up to them because he's not slowing down so much to break and then re-accelerate. He's rounding out his route. So that is the next gen versus current gen comparison. As you can see, not a whole lot different. The biggest difference is really in the feel of the game and the player movement. There's some slight presentation and graphical upgrades, but overall, in my opinion, nothing to really write home about. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.